And welcome back. Now, we've been talking about this yesterday. The overall Johannesburg Stock Exchange index plummeted just over 6% in early trade, and the rand also weakened by nearly 50 cents against the US dollar. All of this amid a worsening effect of the coronavirus on the global markets. Now, South Africa is currently in a technical recession with growth forecast revised to under 0.5%. And economists say that the Reserve Bank will have to implement aggressive rate cuts in order to support the struggling economy. With us now is David Morobe, who's Executive General Manager for the Impact Investment at Business Partners Limited. Thanks so much for coming through.
Thank you for having me.
So, amid all of this negativity, doom and gloom, you come out and you say, well, you know what? There are three sectors that will actually buck the trend here and do well. And you say those are energy, tourism, and technology. So do you still stand by that assertion?
Well, it's always a moot point as to which sectors will be poised for growth relative to other sectors, especially against the background of the technical recession that was recently announced by Statistics SA. What we do as business partners is to try and avoid sheer speculation, and we conduct a quarterly business survey where we go to our SME business owners to gauge their buoyancy and also to get their take on social and economic issues. So the feedback that came through to us gravitated towards these three sectors that say there are still opportunities in energy, there are still opportunities in tourism and technology. I don't think the world must come to a stop. We are very cognizant of the threat of the coronavirus, as you've said, but life must go on, and we need to look for opportunities in spite of. In fact, some of the biggest companies came out of the World War situation and are still sustaining to this day to boost the return to economic vibrancy.
How do you sustain, that optimism, given the fact that Eskom has implemented stage 2 load shedding again this week? We've seen the coronavirus outbreak weakening, South Africa reporting at this stage 7 of its own positive cases. And of course, we've heard the Minister of Tourism pronouncing about the negative impact that this has had on tourism, cancellation of bookings, etc. So explain to us your optimism going ahead.
Perhaps a good starting point is to show that, I'm sure we both agree that energy remains the lifeblood of the modern day economy. And all our entrepreneurs are agreed on one thing, that energy is the only source, is the vital force that powers their businesses, irrespective of which sector they are in. They could be in manufacturing, they could be in retail or service. They require energy for them to run. They are very cognizant and they realize the challenges around the energy, but entrepreneurs, being an optimistic lot, see opportunity in that space. They are saying there's an opportunity for innovation, opportunities are coming around for power banks, opportunities are coming up for solar power, for battery-powered solutions, gas cooks and whatever stoves that you can have. And the recent announcement of the integrated resource plan with the RIPPs actually leaves an opportunity downstream for some of our small and medium enterprises to find a gap that they can participate in. Yes, it is a crisis, and it's been a crisis that's been with us for some time. And as announced by Eskom, it will be with us for the next 18 months. But as I said, as we get the feedback from our entrepreneurs, we still think energy will provide solutions. Just from RIPP, I think about 2,300 megawatts can be added to the grid by leveraging of the entrepreneurial and innovation characteristic of our entrepreneurial community.
But given the relative uncertainty in that particular space, how are these entrepreneurs hoping, to benefit, and who is best positioned at this point to take advantage of these opportunities?
I think currently I'd say the ones that are best positions are the bigger firms for the RIPPs, but invariably there will be opportunities downstream. And as I'm saying, the entrepreneurs are saying there will be opportunities to feed and be able to feed into the broader supply chain of this particular energy crisis and the solution that is being mooted. I want to touch on tourism, which you mentioned earlier on. I think travel and tourism has always been viewed as a positive contributor to the GDP. It's always been something that we can leverage off. And yes, we are cognizant of the coronavirus and the threat that it poses to international tourists coming through to our country. But in spite of that, we're just hoping that government will be able to come up with a very concerted response plan that will be able to contain that impact on the tourism industry per se. President announced a number of good initiatives around the tourism space. The Tourism Equity Fund, I think, which wants to boost transformation in this space. There are also initiatives to increase visibility of police around identified tourist attraction sites. I think these issues for me are an opportunity that can be leveraged, and tourism doesn't contain you only in the high places. There could be a tourism opportunities in places like Soweto and areas that are much not tapped into that could provide opportunities for our small business owners.
Is there enough support, though, for these entrepreneurs to, in fact, not only start those businesses, but grow them, especially against an economic growth forecast, not just for South Africa, but globally, that has been revised downward?
That's when you'll see that support is required in good and in bad times. And I think for us as business partners, that's where we see as our opportunities to provide funding, to restructure balance sheets and be able to get those that are in existence already to be stronger and be able to withstand, including the seasonality or any other impending pandemic that might come around. So you recall that our Western Cape community sustained the challenges that were posed by the drought situation and the fear of day zero. In spite of that, the tourism sector in the Western Cape did survive. So we're saying for us as players in this space, we should leverage off opportunities from government for funding and private sector to say, if there's a viable business that can be contained and sustained during that period to preserve the labor-intensive nature that comes with tourism, we will be able to do that. Not only the finance, but also provide technical assistance to help them sustain during the difficult times as well.
But, for someone sitting at home right now and they thinking, but what is David Morobe talking about? Because you go to places where you are told you can access funding, it doesn't materialize. You go to places where you seek support, people tell you they're busy. So where exactly, how exactly do you go about accessing these opportunities and also resources?
There are a number of funding organizations available, and a few have come up recently, all targeting the small and medium enterprise sector, which has been vaunted as the solution to some of the challenges that we face. In spite of these challenges, our space that we play in as business partners, we still invest about $1 billion or so in this sector annually. It's not enough. I think we could leverage that more times than we can. I was encouraged by the finance minister's announcement about what has been allocated effectively to small business through the agencies that government has. So it's important that we all partner, private sector and government, to make sure that...
If I may interject, the perception is that it is only those who are politically connected and who have access to powerful people within the business sector who actually get access to these funds. How do you dispel that?
I have to dispel it, because if we take that route, I think we're leading ourselves to an economic abyss. We need to look at economic merit as the only criteria to judge whether access to funding should be provided to a proposal that comes through to you. I don't know of any cases within the government sector. I speak from a point of where we operate as a private sector driven organization. Economic merit is the only major criteria through which we can invest in a business. And I hope that which you say, that money goes only to politically connected people, is less than true. We need to make sure that funds goes to those that are intended to actually access those funds to make the economy tick. Others will remain going in the direction that we've been going for the last couple of years, sub 1%. Now you just said
0.5%. Yeah. Just the final one, Moodys downgrade, what's your view on that?
It's a difficult one. I think the finance minister tried as best he could to address the key variables, the debt to GDP ratio, to say where can we contain our expenditure ratios. So I think we have to wait for Moodys to look at the efforts that have been given. I think things are compounded by the challenges that you have. Your introduction about what the coronavirus has done to just the world equity-based an economy per se. So we can only do the best we can as a country to make sure that the fundamentals are in place and show signs that you're going to get better. But I don't want to speculate towards the negative. I have to remain optimistic.
Well, thank you so much for your time this morning, David Morobe, Executive General Manager for Impact Investment at Business Partners Limited. And he says, despite the many challenges facing the economy, some sectors are poised to grow.